Hello, and welcome to the IGLYO Portraits of Queer Youth podcast series. Each podcast, we will speak to a different queer person from around the globe about their experiences and their local communities, bridging the gap between European queer activists and their colleagues around the world. For this episode, we are joined by Tavonga. Tavonga is a dedicated lawyer and human rights advocate with a specialised focus on LGBTQI communities in Zimbabwe. Tavonga, welcome.
Thank you.
So we're going to jump in, but before we do you want to introduce yourself and let the listeners know who you are and kind of a bit about the background of your work?
All right. So I'm Tavonga. I work in Zimbabwe. I'm a registered lawyer. I'm also very passionate about the rights of marginalized communities, including the LGBTQ community. I've worked with different LGBTQ communities and organizations here in Zimbabwe. And most of the times I do a lot of work around advocacy when it comes to policies, when it comes to laws as well. And I'm also passionate about, giving free legal aid to the community members who cannot afford it.
Again, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to hear about the kind of the situation in Zimbabwe and some of the work you do. And jumping into the first question, could you tell us what it means for you to exist as a queer person in the world? So how has it changed your life and perspective moving through the world as a queer person? What does it mean to you?
It means that I get to live and exist in my most authentic form, because I think it takes a lot of courage to live in a hostile environment and still be able to be true to yourself and true to myself when it comes to me. And I think I have realized that being queer is actually a greatest form of self-love. The moment I accepted who I am, it was the greatest form of self-love, which comes with such issues as rejection from friends, and family. So it's something I have really invested, and I think it also means for myself that I get to surround myself with a diverse community of individuals who are like myself. We have shown me that I'm not alone, that I'm normal and I belong, through different, shared experiences in the spaces that have been created by different organizations and individuals. And being queer, has brought out the resilience and strength which I never thought existed within me as an individual. And this has helped me to soldier on in solidarity with other queer people against challenges from stigma and discrimination, different forms of violence, and purposeful exclusion from different policies and law that are meant to protect us. It also means that I get to contribute, to the broader queer advocacy discourse when it comes to advocating for equality and inclusion in different spaces, as well as, policies and laws, is something that I'm also very passionate and qualified in, if I should say. And ultimately, I would say for me, it means I live in my originality and with resolve, joy, strength, and purpose. And being queer is love, and love is a beautiful thing. Love
Yeah.
is a beautiful thing. Yeah, so I still continue to discover myself and, evolve as the times come and go. But generally, that's what it means for me. And that's how it has changed my perspective to life.
I really, really love that queer is love. I think that's an amazing expression and something that it sounds like it brings a lot of solidarity and a lot of joy to you personally. And I think it's something that we should all remember a bit more. And I guess kind of a follow-up question on that. You're maybe one of the lucky queer people in that it not only has brought a lot to you personally, but professionally also, it sounds like too, it's brought a lot of meaning to the work you do.
Yes. You'd realize that I became more active within the community when I was still in university. And in university, and I think through my interactions with the other queer community members, I realized how much there was a gap in terms of addressing legal issues, or just, people having a safe place to say, who is the lawyer I can approach, or who is the legal mind I can approach when I have a problem, or my rights have been violated. What's the safe space? So I think it's something that is still in the work for me, but I have tried to make myself that safe space that anyone can come with their legal problems, and I can help them where I can, or refer them to other safe places that I know.
Incredible. And I think I've been doing queer community work for 10 years, and I think it's challenging at times, but it is some of the most rewarding work you can do. So I'm really glad to hear that you're providing that space for people when they most need it in Zimbabwe. Talking about Zimbabwe, what is the local context like for queer people there? And what do you wish other people knew about the local community around you?
All right, thank you for the question. I think I would describe the local context in Zimbabwe as something that is also very complex, because we come in our diversity, and there are a lot of intersectionalities when it comes to the queer community. But I think actually I've seen many challenges. For example, the same-sex marriages are criminalized. They are not really criminalized, but they are unconstitutional, if I should say, in Zimbabwe. You can't get married to your partner officially in terms of the law. And I think it brings in a lot of complications, in terms of issues like custody of children, in terms of dealing with issues of separation. Yeah, and it has also encouraged a lot of hostility within the broader community, if I should say. To say, people now think that it's okay to not be a state of violence, but there's an exception to that rule to say that violence can be perpetrated against queer individuals. And we also find other laws, in relation to sodomy. Sodomy is criminalized here in Zimbabwe. And even when there's consensual sex, between two men, it's still criminalized. As I said, the broader community itself has quite a hostile attitude towards queer individuals. But they also exist, I think I talked about issues of violence, physical violence and harassment. Now it is even graduated, to online violence. And that has brought, again, more visibility when it comes to queer lives. On the other hand, I would like to say that the queer community in Zimbabwe is also very resilient, and we have continued to share spaces with each other, to allow for interaction and connections, as well as to share, different experiences. I always believe that there's power in storytelling. I might not relate to you when you write a journal, but when you tell a story that almost resonates to where I am in that moment, it can bring a lot of change. So that has been it. And, different organizations continue to advocate for the realization of the rights of queer individuals. However, there's also quite, uncertainty, considering the regional and international wave of anti-queer and anti-rights laws, if I should say. I think you witnessed the situation in Uganda, the situation also in Kenya, Ghana as well. So recently, a motion was introduced. They tried to pass a motion. This motion sought to criminalize funding towards LGBTQ organizations here in Zimbabwe. And I think that has brought so much uncertainty. I think so the private voluntary organizations bill that Parliament is also trying again to pass, it has brought so much uncertainty within the community, but the work has continued. And one thing I wish, others knew about our local community in Zimbabwe is that despite the challenges and we are facing, we continue to try and be resilient, and we are trying to thrive in our activism and to contribute to society just like everyone else. And we continue to ask for support, if I should say, in terms of solidarity. There's power in solidarity, even on an international level, when it comes to advocacy and the realization of the rights of queer individuals, as well as just inclusivity in its broader sense. Yeah, I think that's mostly it.
Thank you. It's really great to hear. I think obviously a lot of our audience is going to be European, and that means a lot of our audience is going to be white. And I think a lot of people think of Africa in a very flat way, in African nations in a very flat way, where they think it's all terrible. And it's really great to hear you talk. I especially love that you're talking about resilience and building connections and storytelling. I think that's really essential for every community, and it really it's a way we build bridges between different parts of the world. And I think that's really important, given that I don't think in Europe we get as much exposure to African queer communities as we should. So I guess a kind of follow-up question, is there a Zimbabwean storyteller, queer storyteller that you really like that people should go research? Is there a writer you particularly like? Is there anyone you could recommend to listeners to follow up with after they've listened to this conversation?
Not really a writer, but I think most organizations lately have been trying to, in Zimbabwe, have been trying to do a lot of storytelling. I think feminist Zimbabwe is feminist Voices Zimbabwe is one such organization that has been doing a lot of work towards storytelling. So I think we could check some of their podcast material as well. They've done quite a lot in that regard. I think I would definitely recommend that.
That's a great recommendation. Thank you so much. We're always happy to lift up our fellow NGOs and our fellow kind of community workers and hear their stories too. So definitely everyone listening, go check that out. What passions drive you? Well, what is it that you think about last thing before bed and first thing in the morning? What makes you tick and makes this work so valuable for you?
I think my greatest passion is my future children. My future children, to say that I would want a world that's better than I've existed in for them when it comes to inclusivity. I think that has been my greatest passion, and as well as social justice, just seeing that everyone is treated fairly. There's no unjustified discrimination or any, inequality like is exposed to the queer community. And just advocacy in general. I like advocating. I really like advocating, and yeah, I think those have been my greatest passions in life. And family, I can't leave family life. Quite a supportive family and partner. Those have been my passions, to say if they won't be threatened by my existence. Because sometimes my identity in our African community does not only affect me, it also affects my family. If I'm out, they are also affected, they are also discriminated against in different forms. So those have been some of the passions that have been driving me in life. And what do I think of, last thing before bed? My mind usually goes very blank just before bed. I don't know if it's a way of relaxing or not, but just before it goes blank, I would say that I try to think of how my day would have gone, picking out the achievements and just giving myself an applause, because sometimes we don't get it enough from other people. If I don't get it from other people, I should definitely get it from myself. So I applaud myself. Then I also look at ways that I could improve on where I would have failed, or where I would have come short. So yeah, that's the last thing I think of when I go to bed. And the first thing I think of is, just the morning. How is the weather like? What am I going to wear today? And just setting goals for the day. Just setting goals for the day to say, what impact am I going to make today? I was a girl guide, through from primary school, secondary school. And I think one of the principles we learned here was always do a good 10 every day. So what's the good 10 I'm going to do? What's a good deed that I'm going to do today? And yeah, that would be generally what I think of last and when I wake up early in the morning.
I think that's, again, it's something that I never think of. You were talking about your passion being kind of your children and the future. And I think we hear kind of that reason for advocacy being given in the climate movement and in the economic justice movements. And I think it's something you don't hear from many queer activists, that they're doing this for future generations. They're doing it for their children. And it's something I'd never really thought about. So thank you for sharing. I think that's really insightful. I think so often we forget that queer parents and queer people going on to be parents is such an important part of our experiences that we don't examine all that often.
Yeah.
So thank you. Moving on kind of from children to youth, and thinking about
Mhm.
our own kind of queer youth that exists now. If you were speaking to a room of queer youth, what wisdom would you want to pass on to them? What do you wish they knew?
I think oftentimes the voice of the youth is suppressed in
Hmm.
most of the community. And I think one thing I would want the youth to know is that our voices matter. And no matter what can be said about our voices, we should keep on bringing them within the space. And also that we should continue to stay authentic to ourselves. At times, there are different reasons we might give ourselves to stay authentic. For example, if I'm authentic, I'll be discriminated against. I might not get the dream job that I want. But right opportunities will always locate us when we are authentic, and we'll be more comfortable with ourselves, as I have been. I would like to think so. Um, One thing that we often ignore is let's prioritize self-care. I know we have a lot of ambition. We are youths and want to achieve a lot of goals, but let's prioritize self-care and find time to just, zero down and just take care of ourselves. And we are more than, I think another thing I would say is we are more than our sexual orientation, right? We have different intersectionalities within our queer bodies. We can be doctors, we can be lawyers, we can be artists, we can be anything we want outside of our sexual orientation. And it makes it even more beautiful, if I should say. It's not the end of us, it's only the beginning. In that we all need a support system. Let's try and find one. Sometimes our strength can run dry, but let's find a support system that aligns with our values as well to keep us going in those moments when everything seems to be so dark. Another thing is let's stay informed of what's happening around us, and where we can, let's be the change that we want to see happening, as we are the future of the queer community.
That point around self-care is so important. I think especially for youth activists, so many people kind of come into the activist space, they're so excited, it gives them so much energy, and they're like, I can do this forever. This is what I'm going to do, it's what I want to do. And I can speak from personal experience that I got 6 years into doing that and then had to do an awful lot of therapy to deal with all the care that I put on the sidelines. So I think it's very important around activism and around advocacy work to make sure that you're looking after yourself and that you're building yourself as a sustainable leader and a sustainable voice for your community. So I think it's a really excellent point. Before you leave us, the final question: who is Tavonga, and how do you want people to see you? When people stop listening today, what do you hope they think about you?
I hope they think that I'm a very peaceful but also powerful person. um, that most times people think when someone is peaceful they are weak, but sometimes we can be peaceful and yet be so powerful. And that I'm also a very passionate person when it comes to advocacy for the queer individuals, and that I am continuously, and I never want to stop learning, and I know I'll never stop learning. That I'm also very enthusiastic, determined and youthful, as I said in the beginning. I'm still tapping into that youthful energy, and I hope it to sustain me throughout. Yeah, I think that's much about Tavonga.
Amazing. Well, it's been a privilege speaking with you today. Thank you so much for speaking with our audience, and yeah, have a wonderful day.